The great American dream often looks like a glossy postcard, especially from a distance. But for Kelvin and Susan Miller, the reality of relocating from the sun-drenched coast of Australia to the United States was less of a dream and more of a gritty, unfiltered documentary. This is the story of their family's journey from the brink of ruin to a life redefined by community. A journey that tests the very limits of hope and resilience. In early 2024, Kelvin and Susan packed up their life in Brisbane. With their 3 children, 15-year-old Don, 11-year-old Dov, and little 6-year-old Karoline, they landed in a bustling American suburb, full of optimism. Kelvin had a promising lead on a tech consultancy role, and Susan, a gifted educator, planned to start teaching. They knew there would be a transition period, a few bumps in the road as they settled in. What they didn't expect was a relentless series of setbacks, a slow financial bleed they later called death by 1,000 cuts. It started with their credit history, or rather, the lack of one. In America, they were ghosts. Starting at zero meant paying astronomical deposits for everything. Utilities, a rental home, even cell phone plans demanded huge sums up front, draining their savings before they had even unpacked their bags. Then came the job market. Just 3 months after their arrival, Kelvin's promising lead evaporated. The company announced a major round of corporate layoffs, and his potential position was gone, just like that. But the biggest shock was the healthcare system. One afternoon, Dave fell while playing and broke his arm, a fairly routine injury. The trip to the emergency room, however, was anything but routine. The final bill for that minor emergency was staggering at cost, more than their first car back in Australia. The sticker shock was a harsh welcome to the American way of life. 2 years passed. The rainy day fund they had so carefully built wasn't just gone. The clouds had settled in permanently. The dream had soured into a relentless struggle for survival. To make ends meet, Kelvin was working 3 different delivery jobs, his days and nights a blur of driving and exhaustion. Susan, after helping the kids with their homework, would spend her late-night hours tutoring online. Her own exhaustion masked by a brave face for the children. They were running on fumes, both financially and emotionally. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday evening. After paying the electricity bill, just to keep the lights on, Kelvin stared at their bank account. The number staring back at him was $42. $42 to feed a family of 5 for the next 10 days, until his next patchwork of paychecks came in. He opened the refrigerator. It was a cavern of condiments and 1 half-empty carton of milk. The silence in the house was heavy with unspoken fear. The most heartbreaking sign of their struggle was their eldest son, Dan. He had started skipping lunch at school, pretending he was hungry so that his little sister Karoline could have his share of the cereal for breakfast. He was trying to be the man of the house in the only way he knew how, shouldering a burden no teenager should ever have to carry. For months, the Millers had been attending a local church, Grace Harbor. They sat in the back row, a quiet, anonymous family, slipping out the moment the service ended. They were masters at avoiding the polite, "How are you doing?" because they didn't know how to answer honestly without breaking down. The shame was a physical weight, pressing down on them. But that Sunday, the weight became too much to bear. The pastor's sermon was about community and bearing one another's burdens. The words hit Kelvin with the force of a tidal wave. After the service, as people milled around with coffee, Kelvin made a decision. He walked over to Pastor Mike, his heart pounding. He pulled him aside, and his voice cracked as the carefully constructed walls of pride crumbled. "We're out of options," he whispered. "We need help. My kids are hungry." What happened next wasn't just a handout. It was a mobilization. It was a community springing into motion. The news of the miller's silent struggle spread, not as gossip, but as a call to action. Within 48 hours, the Grace Harbor engine was humming with purpose. The first wave of help came from the moms group. They showed up at the miller's front door, not with pity, but with purpose. They carried in bags and boxers filled with 3 weeks' worth of groceries, along with gift cards for gas and other necessities. When Susan saw a bunch of fresh bananas and a carton of strawberries for Karoline, she burst into tears. It was the first time she had cried from relief in over 2 years. But the support went far beyond immediate relief. It was about creating a sustainable future. A deacon in the church, a man who ran a local engineering firm, sat down with Kelvin. He looked over his resume and realized that Kelvin's Australian credentials and experience were a perfect, unique fit for a specialized project his company was launching. He didn't offer a temporary gig. He offered Kelvin a stable, well-paying position that valued his skills. It was a professional lifeline. Then there was the family's aging minivan. The transmission had been slipping for weeks, a constant source of anxiety. One Saturday morning, 3 men from the church showed up in their driveway with toolboxes. They spent the entire day working on the van, getting their hands greasy, sharing stories and laughter. By evening, the transmission was repaired, running smoothly. They refused to take a single cent for their labor. "That's just what neighbors do," one of them said with a shrug. Perhaps the most profound change was in the children. Dan and Dave, who had become withdrawn and isolated by their family's struggle, were invited to join the church's youth mentorship program. They were paired with older mentors, went on hiking trips, and joined a basketball league. For the first time since leaving Brisbane, they found a sense of belonging. They weren't just the new kids from Australia anymore. They were part of a team, part of a family. 6 months later, the Miller household sounds different. The tense silence of stress has been replaced by the noisy, chaotic, beautiful sounds of a busy, stable family. The fridge is full. The bills are paid. The minivan runs without a shudder. They aren't just surviving in America anymore. They are thriving. They are becoming part of its fabric, and they are paying it forward. Kelvin and Susan now lead the church's newcomers welcome team. Their mission is to look out for other international families who are just starting their journey in America. They know the challenges, the hidden pitfalls, and the crushing loneliness. They meet new families at the airport, help them navigate the confusing paperwork, and most importantly, they invite them over for dinner. They make sure no one else has to feel the isolation they once did. The Miller family's story is a powerful reminder that the American dream, in its truest form, isn't about individual success against all odds. It's about community. It's about the courage to ask for help and the compassion to offer it. As Kelvin often says now, with a smile that reaches his eyes, we came to America looking for a career. We ended up finding a family. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, please consider sharing it. You never know who might need to hear it. Do you and forget to like and subscribe for more stories about the power of community and the resilience of the human spirit. See you next time.